Once you get your transmission in a position where it's up on its side with the left side facing upwards, you're going to want to remove these 12 8mm bolts that hold this pan in place. This pan is covering your valve body assembly. I only have 4 holding mine right now because I've already had the pan off before, but you should have 12 holding yours. Once you get your 12 bolts out, all you have to do is pull straight up on the pan and it'll just come right up. Be careful with the gasket because as long as it's not damaged, it can be reused. If you look inside of my pan, I actually have some corrosion going on from the water and coolant mixture that got into the transmission due to the leak at the transcooler. It's not surprising because mine sat for about a year after it failed. Now you'll want to remove these clips that hold the wiring harness onto the solenoids. All you really have to do is push the clips upwards and then back, and they should slide right off of the solenoids. Try to be careful not to overstress them because you can actually break the clips. I ended up doing that on one of these, in fact. Once you have all 6 of these clips removed, you can just move the wiring harness out of the way. It is still held on by a plastic clip along the harness that clips into a metal plate that comes out of the valve body assembly. You can just sort of pinch the clip and it'll slip right out of the hole that it sits in. And then you can just move the whole wiring harness around as you please. It'll try to fight and go back to its original position, but you can kind of hook it on some things to keep it out of the way for the time being. The next thing we want to do is we want to turn the selector all the way to the low position. So if it's turned all the way counterclockwise, you're going to be starting in park. You'll go reverse, neutral, drive with overdrive, drive, and then low. So basically all you're going to do is turn it all the way clockwise though. Now we're going to start removing the valve body. In order to do that, we're going to remove the 3 shorter bolts marked with yellow, as well as the 19 bolts marked with red. We only want to remove these bolts, otherwise we can have parts that we don't want to come loose end up falling off. So be sure that you only remove those 22 bolts. As you can see, those 3 are shorter than the other 19. Now, in order to remove the valve body assembly, you just grab 2 points and you try to twist while pulling upwards. Once you get it loose, it'll come right up. You have to be a little careful because you do have a hook that's grabbed onto the rod on my forward right section where the wiring harness is. There's a little hook there that I'll show you in a moment that catches onto the arm. I'm just going to set this in the pan, right where it would normally sit in the transmission. Now go ahead and pull the shaft out of the transmission and go ahead and set it back with the valve body assembly as it would be while in the transmission. Now we're going to be moving to the bottom of the transmission. The bottom pan on this transmission is held in, I believe, by 17 bolts. I only have 5 holding mine on at this time because I didn't bother installing all of them again after turning the pan before removing it from the vehicle. So, once you have all of your bolts removed, just like the one on top, it should come straight off. And again, be careful with the gasket as it is reusable as long as it's not damaged. Next, I'm going to remove the transmission filter, which ends up leaking a little bit on me. And then we also need to remove the seal for the transmission filter, which in order to do that, all I do is try to pry against the side of the hole along with the back of the seal, and it slowly pushes it out. Just kind of working it side to side to walk it out. Next, we're going to have to use a 19mm socket. And what we're going to use this for is we're going to use it to loosen the nut on the tube here that has a hex key in the end of it. The nut is used to lock it in place and keep it from backing out on its own. Once you have the nut loosened just a little bit, you can use a 6mm hex key or socket adapter, and you can use that to back out the entire tube the rest of the way. In fact, you only have to even loosen it a little bit. You can turn it the rest of the way out by hand. Before removing the chain cover, we're going to want to remove this pin. All you have to do is hold it about vertical, and it should slide straight out. It has a little detent sort of built into it, and it has a matching cutout on the plate that it holds. that controls the lever. So all you really have to do is turn it upright and pull it straight out of that hole, and it'll just come right out. Next, we're going to remove the chain cover. The chain cover is held on by an assortment of bolts as well as a stud. There are 11 short 10mm head bolts around the outside marked in red. The stud is marked with green. I'm not sure what size it is. I ended up using an adjustable wrench to remove it. There are also 2 other 10mm bolts marked with orange that are a little bit longer. There is one long 8mm bolt marked with yellow, and there's a 13mm bolt hidden in the valve body area, and that is the last bolt you'll have to remove to get this part to come apart. Removing this cover can be difficult. I gave it a few taps with a hammer on the far side there, and it still didn't budge very much, so I ended up using a screwdriver and kind of prying around the side of it until it popped loose. You do have to be careful because the side that I'm hitting with a hammer, there are some springs over there that are forcing the entire cover upwards. That's why my hand's resting on top of it in case it does come loose. It won't go and shoot off. But it does take some work to actually get it to come loose. So just try to be patient with it. If you have to, like I said, use a screwdriver and kind of work your way up the side. There's a small lobe that kind of sticks out where there's actually a pin that aligns the parts. So that tends to hold it in place and keep you from removing the entire thing. You just kind of have to work around that until it comes loose. Once you have it loose, it should just come straight up. You just have to find a spot where you can set it. I kind of actually had to set it back down and clear some space for it. Alright, so that's going to be the end of this video. I will say real quick, you should be careful while removing the cover, because those 3 springs on the left side actually have small sleeves in the center of them that go up into the cover. And if you're not careful, you can drop those out of the cover while removing it. So just try to make sure that you don't lose those. They're all just about 1.5 inches, I think, long little sleeves with 45-degree cuts on either end. They almost look like a pasta noodle. but but yeah, just try to be careful of that while removing the cover. Other than that, thanks for joining me. I hope to see you next time.